Kids rejected the man who raised them, saying, "You're not our real dad. We don't owe you anything since you're just a replacement." They declared, "Our fun dad is back and he's everything you're not." When their deadbeat biological father left again, they came crawling back. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! This is gonna be a long one, and I need to get this off my chest because I'm going crazy over here. I've 38 female, got 2 kids, Noah, 17 male, and Amber, 16 female. And their biological father, Derek, is, well, let's just say he's been messing up our lives since day one. So I gotta start from the beginning because this whole mess makes no sense without context. I met Derek when I was 19 and dumb as rocks. My parents hated him, which obviously made him even more attractive because teenage rebellion and all that stupid shit. Derek was trouble from the start, but I was too stupid to see it. He'd disappear for days without telling me where he was going. Always had some brilliant get-rich-quick scheme that was going to make us millionaires, but never seemed to actually involve any work on his part. We had Noah when I was 21, and honestly, that should have been Derek's wake-up call. But this dumb just kept getting worse. By the time Amber came along a year later, Derek was already showing his true colors big time. He'd stay out all night doing God knows what while I'm home with 2 babies under 2. When I'd complain, he'd say he was working, but never had any money to show for it. But the real Derek came out when Noah was 3 and Amber was 2. This absolute genius decided to rob a convenience store with a gun because he owed money to some drug dealers. Not just any robbery either. This psycho pistol whipped the 18-year-old clerk so hard the kid ended up with permanent brain damage. When some customer tried to stop him, Derek actually shot at the guy. Missed, thank God, but the customer still ended up in the ICU from diving behind a shelf trying not to get killed. I remember getting the call from the police at like 2 a.m. They're asking if I know where Derek is, and I'm like, no, why would I know that? Because he'd been gone for 3 days at that point. Then they tell me he's wanted for armed robbery and attempted murder, and I just about threw up right there on the phone. Derek got arrested 2 days later trying to buy more drugs with the money he stole. Real criminal mastermind, this one. The whole thing was on security cameras too, so there was no denying what he did. 12 years for aggravated assault, armed robbery, and attempted murder. Could have been worse, honestly. The prosecutor wanted to try for first-degree attempted murder, but took a plea deal. Those first few years after Derek got locked up were absolutely brutal. I was working at the diner during the day and cleaning office buildings at night just to afford rent on some shitty apartment. My mom helped when she could, but she was dealing with her own health problems and couldn't really babysit much. The kids barely remembered Derek after a while, which honestly was probably the best thing that could have happened. Noah would sometimes ask about Daddy, but I just told him Daddy had to go away for work and would be gone for a long time. Didn't see any point in explaining to a 3-year-old that his father was in prison for beating someone nearly to death. Money was always tight. Like choose between groceries or keeping the electricity on tight. I remember one Christmas I could only afford one small present for each kid and spent the whole day crying because other families were posting pictures of their kids with piles of gifts under the tree. I started having these thoughts like maybe the kids would be better off without me. Maybe I should give them up for adoption to some nice family who could actually provide for them properly. Dark thoughts, but when you're that exhausted and stressed all the time, your brain goes to some pretty scary places. That was my life for about 3 years. Single mom, broke as hell, working myself to death just to barely survive, raising 2 kids who didn't understand why we struggled so much, while other families seemed to have everything figured out. I honestly don't know how much longer I could have kept that up without completely losing my mind. Some days I felt like I was drowning, and there was nobody around to throw me a life preserver. But sometimes life surprises you in the grocery store cereal aisle when you least expect it. Sunday afternoon, I'm at the grocery store trying to do the weekly shopping with what little money I had left after paying bills. Anyone who's taken small kids grocery shopping knows it's basically torture, but doing it while broke adds a whole other level of stress. Noah was having a complete nuclear meltdown in the cereal aisle because I couldn't afford the Lucky Charms he wanted. I'm talking full-on laying on the floor screaming, crying tantrum because mommy was grabbing the generic brand Cheerios instead. Amber's starting to get upset too because Noah's having a fit, and other people are staring at us like I'm the worst parent in the world. I'm standing there trying not to lose my shit in public when this guy comes over and starts talking to Noah. Not in that condescending way adults usually talk to kids, but like he's actually listening to what Noah's upset about. He's telling Noah about how the healthy cereal makes you strong like superheroes, and how if you eat it every day, you can jump higher and run faster. Kid stops crying immediately. Just like that. This random stranger managed to calm down my son in about 30 seconds when I'd been struggling with him for 10 minutes. The guy introduces himself as Tristan, and he's got this really calm energy about him. Clean cut, nice clothes that actually fit properly, work boots that look expensive. You could tell he had his life together in ways I couldn't even imagine at that point. When he smiled at the kids, his whole face lit up, and both Noah and Amber were just staring at him like he was the coolest person they'd ever met. We end up talking in the checkout line, and he asks about the kids. I give him the basics. Single mom. Their dad's not in the picture, just trying to get by. Most guys would have made some excuse and gotten out of there fast, but Tristan seemed genuinely interested. Asked about their ages, what they liked to do, if they played any sports. After about 6 months of dating, Tristan started coming around the house more. At first, just for dinner once a week, or maybe to watch a movie on weekends. But slowly he became part of our routine. He'd fix things that were broken around the apartment. The leaky faucet I couldn't afford to call a plumber for. The wobbly table I'd been dealing with for months. The ceiling fan that made scary noises. The first time he helped Noah with homework, I thought it was just being nice. But then he started doing it regularly. Sitting at our kitchen table, going over math problems, and reading assignments. Amber would bring him her school papers to see too, and he'd make just as big a deal about her good grades as he did Noah's. Tristan never tried to be their father right away. He was just this reliable presence who showed up when he said he would, helped when we needed it, and treated the kids like they mattered. Novel concept after dealing with Derek for so many years. The first time Noah called him dad was when Tristan was teaching him to ride a bike in the parking lot behind our apartment complex. Kid fell down and scraped his knee pretty bad, and without thinking ran to Tristan crying, "Dad, it hurts!" I held my breath waiting to see how Tristan would react. He just picked Noah up and carried him inside to clean the scrape like it was the most natural thing in the world. Didn't correct him or make it weird, just took care of him like any father would. That's when I knew this guy was different from anyone I'd ever dated before. Amber took a little longer to warm up to the idea of Tristan being a father figure, but once she did, she was all in. He'd sit through those awful Barbie movies with her. Let her paint his nails, terribly, but he'd wear it to work anyway. Read bedtime stories in different voices for all the characters. When we moved in together, the kids were 7 and 6, and it felt like we'd always been a family. Tristan never complained about suddenly having a house full of kids' stuff, or having to share me with 2 little people who needed constant attention. Looking back, that was probably the happiest time in my life. Finally felt like we had some stability, some security, someone I could actually depend on instead of doing everything alone all the time. Should have known it was too good to last. Everything went to hell because of one phone call. I'm at work doing my shift at the hospital when my phone starts buzzing. Number I don't recognize, but it keeps calling back, so finally I answer thinking, maybe it's an emergency. It's Derek's mom, Linda, and I haven't heard from this woman in literally over a decade. Linda starts off all sweet asking how I am, how the kids are doing, making small talk like we're old friends instead of 2 people who haven't spoken since Derek got locked up. I'm wondering what the hell she wants because Linda never gave a shit about Noah and Amber when Derek was around. Never babysat, never offered to help when I was struggling, basically pretended they didn't exist. Then she drops the news. Derek's getting released in 2 months. Apparently he's been a model prisoner, took all the anger management classes, found Jesus, the whole rehabilitation song and dance. She starts going on about how prison broke him down and built him back up, and how he's not the same man who went in 12 years ago. I'm standing there in the hospital break room trying to process this, while Linda keeps talking about second chances, and how Derek's been reading the Bible every day. How he talks about Noah and Amber constantly, and regrets missing out on their lives. She's laying it on thick about how he wants to make amends, and be the father he should have been from the beginning. Part of me wanted to hang up right there because screw Derek and his sudden desire to play daddy after 12 years. But Linda keeps pushing, saying stuff like, those kids deserve to know their real father, and you can't keep a man from his children forever, and think about what's best for Noah and Amber. The guilt trip was working, even though I knew it was bullshit. She's going on about how Derek talks about them every day in prison, how he has their baby pictures taped to his cell wall, how he's been saving up money from his prison job to buy them presents when he gets out. Classic manipulation, but it was hitting all the right buttons. I'm torn as hell about what to do. On one hand, Derek chose drugs and crime over his family, and nearly killed innocent people in the process. On the other hand, Noah and Amber are his biological children, and maybe they deserve a chance to know him if he's actually changed. The worst part is Linda keeps calling when the kids aren't around, and I haven't told them about any of this yet. She's asking what their interests are now, what sports they play, what they're planning to do after high school, making it sound like Derek's genuinely interested in being part of their lives instead of just wanting to play the victim. Finally, I cave and tell Tristan what's going on. He is not happy. Like at all. Keeps asking why I'm even entertaining this idea. Why we can't just leave well enough alone when our family is perfectly fine the way it is. He's worried about the kids getting hurt when Derek inevitably disappoints them again. But I convince myself that maybe Derek really has changed, and the kids have a right to know their biological father if he's actually trying to turn his life around. Plus, Linda's constant calls are wearing me down, with all her talk about family and second chances, and doing what's right for the children. So, against Tristan's advice, I sit Noah and Amber down and tell them that Derek's getting out of prison and wants to meet them. Their reactions were pretty much what I expected. Noah seemed curious, but not like super excited about it. Amber was more hesitant since she barely remembered Derek at all, and Tristan was the only father she'd ever really known. They asked basic questions like where he'd been living, prison, why he went away, made some bad choices, if he was dangerous. I said no, which was probably a lie, and whether this meant Tristan wasn't their dad anymore. Definitely not. Linda was thrilled when I told her the kids were willing to meet Derek. She sets up this whole thing at a chain restaurant. Neutral ground, she called it. Said she'd be there to help facilitate and make sure everyone was comfortable. Looking back, I should have seen how orchestrated the whole thing was. The day of the meeting, I'm nervous as hell. Tristan comes with us because there's no way I'm handling this alone, and honestly, I wanted Derek to see that we'd built a good life without him. The kids are anxious but trying to be mature about the whole situation. Derek walks into that restaurant looking like a completely different person from the skinny addict who got arrested 12 years ago. Prison had bulked him up big time, but he's putting on this whole humble act, talking about how sorry he is, how much he's missed them, how he thought about them every single day. The kids are fascinated despite themselves. Noah's asking about life in prison, and Derek's telling these stories about surviving, in that make it sound like some adventure, instead of punishment for nearly killing people. Amber's staying close to Tristan, but listening to every word. By the end of that first meeting, Derek had scheduled another visit for the following week. That's when I realized I'd made a huge mistake letting this man back into our lives. But it was too late. The damage was already done, and Derek was just getting started with his manipulation campaign. Derek started seeing Noah and Amber every weekend. At first, it seemed harmless enough. He'd take them to movies or out to eat, basic father-kid stuff that I figured he had a right to do since they were his biological children. He was staying at his mom Linda's house while he looked for work, and an apartment, so I thought maybe he was actually trying to get his life together. But I started noticing weird changes in how the kids acted around Tristan almost immediately. Small stuff at first that I tried to tell myself I was imagining. Noah stopped asking Tristan for help with his car, even though Tristan had been teaching him basic maintenance for months. Amber didn't want Tristan to help braid her hair anymore. Said she'd rather just wear it down or do it herself. They got quiet during family dinners, spending more time staring at their phones instead of talking about their day like they used to. When Tristan would ask about school or friends, they'd give these short one-word answers instead of actually having conversations. It was like they were tolerating him instead of enjoying his company. Then Derek started working on their heads more directly. The kids would come home from their weekend visits with all these new ideas about family and loyalty and what real fathers do. Derek was telling them he got wrongfully imprisoned, which is complete horseshit since there's literally security camera footage of him pistol whipping that store clerk. But he spun this whole story about being in the wrong place at the wrong time and getting railroaded by the system. According to Derek's version of events, he was just trying to provide for his family when he got mixed up with the wrong people. The robbery was supposedly someone else's idea, and Derek was just the lookout who got blamed for everything. Never mind that the security footage shows him being the one with the gun doing all the violence. Derek convinced the kids that the video was somehow misleading or taken out of context. But the absolute worst part was how Derek talked about Tristan. He'd tell Noah and Amber that Tristan stole his family while he was locked up and couldn't defend himself. That I only married Tristan for financial security since Derek wasn't there to provide for us. That if Derek had never gone to prison, we'd all still be together as one big happy family. Derek made it sound like Tristan was some opportunistic vulture who swooped in to take advantage of a vulnerable single mom instead of a good man who stepped up when nobody else would. The kids started buying into this narrative that Tristan was somehow the bad guy in this situation instead of the hero who'd been raising them since they were babies. Noah began calling Tristan by his first name instead of dad. Just like that, after 12 years of calling this man his father, he switches to Tristan, like he's some random roommate. When I asked him about it, Noah said Derek told him it was disrespectful to call another man dad when his real father was alive and available. Both kids started doing this thing where they'd compare everything Tristan did to what Derek would supposedly do. Derek says real men don't show emotions when Tristan got teary-eyed at Amber's choir concert. Derek thinks that rule is stupid when Tristan asked them to clean up after themselves in the kitchen. Derek understands why we're frustrated about this. Anytime Tristan tried to parent them about anything, they'd question me about why I gave up on Derek so easily, like I was supposed to wait around for 12 years, while he served time for violent felonies. They'd ask why I never brought them to visit him in prison, why I never told them how much he missed them, why I moved on with my life instead of keeping the family together. Derek was rewriting history and making me look like the villain for not standing by my man while he was locked up for nearly killing people. The worst part was when I found out Derek was asking the kids for money by accident when I saw Noah's bank account statement. This kid who worked part-time at GameStop was transferring his entire paycheck to Derek every week. When I confronted him about it, Noah said Derek was getting back on his feet and needed help with basic expenses. Meanwhile, Tristan's paying for their car insurance, cell phone bills, college savings accounts, clothes, gas money, food, basically everything they need to survive. But somehow Derek's the one who deserves their financial support because he's their real dad who's struggling to reintegrate into society. So I called Derek, straight up. I said, "Why is a 17-year-old paying your bills, Derek? You good with shaking down your own kid now?" He had the nerve to go, "He offered. I'm not forcing him. He said he wanted to help his dad. Like I was supposed to clap for that?" I tried talking to Amber about it too and found out she was giving Derek money from her job at the mall. Both my kids were handing over their paychecks to a guy who just got out of prison while taking for granted everything Tristan provided for them on a daily basis. When I explained to them how messed up this was, they got defensive about it. Said Derek was family, and family helps each other out when times are tough. They couldn't see that they were being manipulated by a master manipulator who knew exactly which buttons to push. The disrespect toward Tristan got worse every week. They'd roll their eyes when he tried to give them advice, ignore him when he asked them to do chores, argue with every decision he made about household rules. Derek had convinced them that Tristan was overstepping his boundaries by trying to parent children who weren't biologically his. Tristan started pulling back emotionally, which honestly I can't blame him for. Imagine raising someone else's kids for over a decade, loving them like your own, sacrificing for them every single day, just to watch them choose their criminal biological father over you. He stopped volunteering to help with their problems, stopped asking about their day at school, became more like a polite roommate than a father figure. The kids didn't even notice how much they were hurting him, or if they did notice, they didn't care. I tried talking to them individually about what Derek had really done, about why he went to prison, about how manipulative he was being, but they'd just say he was a different person now, and I was holding his past against him. They couldn't see that Derek was using their emotions against them to get money and validation, while contributing absolutely nothing to their lives. Derek was playing the long game perfectly. He knew he couldn't compete with Tristan on actual parenting or providing for the kids, so instead he focused on undermining Tristan's authority and rewriting the family history, making himself the victim and Tristan the villain in a story that should have been about gratitude for the man who stepped up when their biological father chose crime over family. By the time I realized how bad things had gotten, it was almost too late. The kids were completely under Derek's influence and starting to see Tristan as an obstacle to their relationship with their real father, instead of the man who'd loved and raised them for most of their lives. That's when everything came to a head in the worst possible way. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Derek was supposed to pick up Noah and Amber for one of their weekend visits. Usually, I'd meet him at the door or outside in the driveway because I didn't want this jerk in my house. But Noah had forgotten his basketball shoes upstairs and was taking forever to find them. Derek's standing in my living room looking around like he owns the place, making comments about the furniture and the big screen TV that Tristan had saved up to buy us last Christmas. You could tell he was sizing everything up, probably calculating how much money we had compared to him being broke and living in his mom's basement. Then this piece of shit notices the family photos on the mantle. Pictures of Tristan with the kids at Noah's basketball games, Amber's honor roll ceremonies, family vacations, all the normal stuff families have displayed in their homes. That's when Derek started running his mouth about how Tristan was playing house with his family, how the kids needed a real father figure in their lives instead of some wannabe dad who had to buy their love with presents and trips. He's saying this shit right in front of Noah and Amber like it's perfectly normal to disrespect the man who raised them in his own house. I could see Tristan getting tense, but he kept his cool at first. Told Derek to watch his mouth and remember whose house he was standing in. But Derek wasn't done being a disrespectful piece of shit. If anything, that just encouraged him to keep pushing. The whole time, Noah and Amber are just standing there watching their biological father completely disrespect the man who'd been their dad for over a decade. Not saying anything to defend Tristan, not telling Derek to stop, just letting it happen like they agreed with what he was saying. Then Derek says something that I'll never forget as long as I live. He looks right at Tristan and goes, "These kids don't need some stranger pretending to be their daddy just because you couldn't get a woman pregnant yourself." The look on Tristan's face when Derek said that was heartbreaking, like he'd been slapped across the face. That's when Derek made his biggest mistake. He got right up in Tristan's face and shoved him hard enough that my husband stumbled backward into the wall. The sound of Tristan hitting the wall was loud enough that I thought he might be seriously hurt. What happened next was honestly the most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed in my entire life. Tristan, who Derek thought was some weak suburbanite, proceeded to absolutely destroy this ex-con piece of garbage. Turns out my husband boxed in college, and those skills don't just disappear, even if you haven't used them in years. Derek went down hard and stayed down. I'm talking about a complete beatdown. Broken nose, probably cracked ribs, blood all over my living room floor. Tristan didn't just hit him once and stop. He kept going until Derek was curled up in a ball, begging him to quit. It was like watching 12 years of frustration and disrespect get settled in about 30 seconds. But here's the part that still makes me sick to my stomach. While Tristan is standing over Derek, who's bleeding and barely able to move, having just defended our home and our family against someone who attacked him first, Noah and Amber are screaming at Tristan to stop. My own kids are crying and yelling at the man who raised them, calling him crazy, asking how he could hurt their real dad like that. Noah actually tried to get between them, pushing Tristan away from Derek and telling him to get off my dad. Amber was kneeling next to Derek asking if he was okay, if he needed an ambulance, treating him like he was the victim in this situation. They were comforting the violent ex-con who just attacked their stepfather in their own home. Derek's laying there playing up the victim angle for all it was worth, groaning about how violent Tristan was, asking the kids, "See what kind of man your mother married? And this is who you want raising my children?" The manipulation was unreal, but the kids were buying every word of it. I completely lost my shit on Noah and Amber right there. Started screaming about how Derek threw the first punch in our house, how Tristan was defending himself against someone who attacked him, how they just watched their real father prove what kind of person he really was. But they weren't hearing any of it. Noah's going off about how Derek was just trying to talk, and Tristan attacked him for no reason. Amber's saying Tristan is dangerous and unstable, and she's scared of him now. They couldn't see that Derek had orchestrated the whole thing to make Tristan look bad and turn them against him even more. Derek finally gets up off the floor, still playing the victim, telling the kids they don't have to go with him today because he's too hurt to do anything fun. But he makes sure to say it loud enough that we can all hear how Tristan brutally attacked him when all he was doing was trying to have a conversation about his children. After Derek left, limping and holding his ribs like the dramatic jerk he is, I had the worst fight with my kids that we'd ever had in their entire lives. They were saying Tristan was out of control, that Derek was just trying to bond with them, and Tristan couldn't handle it, that they were scared to be in the same house as someone so violent. I tried explaining that Derek deliberately provoked the fight, that he attacked Tristan first, that everything he said was designed to hurt and humiliate the man who'd been nothing but good to them. But they'd already made up their minds about who was right and who was wrong. That night, Tristan didn't say much of anything, just went to our bedroom and closed the door. When I went to check on him later, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall with this completely broken expression on his face. He looked like someone had ripped his heart out and stomped on it. That's when I realized we'd lost them completely. Derek had won. After 12 years of Tristan being the best father those kids could have asked for, they chose the violent criminal over the man who'd sacrificed everything for them. Tristan told me straight up that he couldn't trust them anymore. Couldn't invest in kids who would throw him away the second their biological father showed up with lies and manipulation. And honestly, I couldn't blame him for being done with all of us after that. The kids kept expecting things to go back to normal like nothing happened. They wanted Tristan to keep paying for their car insurance, keep helping with college applications, keep being dad when it was convenient for them. But they also wanted to keep seeing Derek and treating him like he was the hero of this whole story, instead of the violent criminal who started a fight in our living room. I had to make a choice, and honestly, it wasn't even that hard once I really thought about it. I chose my husband, the man who'd been there for us every single day for over a decade, who stepped up when he didn't have to, who loved kids that weren't his like they were his own blood, over two teenagers who decided their loyalty belonged to a guy they barely knew just because he shared some DNA with them. I sat Noah and Amber down and laid out their options. They could have Derek as their father figure if that's what they really wanted, but that meant losing all the benefits that came with Tristan being their dad. No more car payments, phone bills, college funds, family vacations, none of it. If Derek was such a great father, then he could handle providing for them himself. You should have seen their faces when I explained what this actually meant. No more unlimited data plans on their phones. They could get basic flip phones and pay for them with their part-time job money. No more car insurance payments from us. They could walk or take the bus to work and school. No more college savings account. Derek could figure out how to pay for their education if he cared so much about their future. The college thing really hit them hard because Tristan had been putting money away for their education since they were little kids. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars that he'd saved up working overtime and side jobs because he wanted them to have opportunities he never had. But if Derek was their real dad, then Derek could worry about paying for college. I also told them I wasn't going to be their personal taxi service to go see Derek anymore. If they wanted to spend time with their real father so badly, then they could figure out their own transportation. I wasn't going to waste my gas money and free time driving them to worship the man who attacked my husband in our own home. My family completely split over this decision. My mom thinks I'm being cruel to confused teenagers who don't understand what they're doing. She keeps saying they're just kids who made a mistake, and I should be the bigger person and fix things. My sister told me I'm finally standing up for myself and my marriage, instead of letting everyone walk all over me. Derek's family is calling me every name in the book. His mom, Linda, has been leaving nasty voicemails about how I'm poisoning the kids against their father and keeping them from having a relationship with Derek, which is rich coming from the woman who disappeared for 12 years and only showed up when Derek got out of prison. But here's what really pisses me off about all these people lecturing me about family and forgiveness. Where were they when I needed help? When I was working double shifts to keep food on the table? When I couldn't afford Christmas presents? When I was drowning as a single mom with two babies? None of these people stepped up to help. But now, they want to tell me how to handle my family? The kids tried every manipulation tactic in the book to get me to change my mind. Crying about how I was choosing Tristan over my own children, saying they didn't understand why I was being so mean to them, asking why I couldn't just forgive and forget. But I explained that they made their choice when they decided Derek was their real father, and Tristan was just some guy who lived in our house. Tristan changed all the passwords on our streaming accounts, took them off the family phone plan, stopped paying for their car insurance like I told him to. When Noah's car broke down, he came to Tristan asking for help fixing it like nothing had happened. Tristan just told him to ask his real dad for help since that's who he'd chosen. The look on Noah's face was priceless. Like it suddenly occurred to him that Derek didn't actually know shit about cars or have any useful skills beyond manipulation and violence. But that's not Tristan's problem anymore. Noah made his bed so he can lie in it. Then about 2 weeks ago, Derek pulled his disappearing act again. Just stopped answering the kids' calls and texts completely. They were devastated, calling his mom asking where he was, wondering if something happened to him. Classic Derek behavior. All talk about being a changed man until actual parenting responsibilities show up. Turns out Derek got arrested again for assault charges after getting into a fight at some park. So much for finding God in prison and being a reformed man. The kids found out when Linda called crying about how Derek was back in jail and needed bail money. Guess who they expected to help pay for that? Not happening. Now Noah and Amber are acting like they want everything to go back to how it was before Derek showed up. They're being nice to Tristan again, asking about getting back on the family phone plan, wondering when he's going to start helping with college stuff again. But Tristan told them straight up that ship has sailed. He said watching them choose Derek over him after everything he'd done for them was the most humiliating experience of his life, that he can't pretend to be their father when they've made it clear that's not what they want. They burned that bridge when they decided blood was more important than the man who actually raised them. Some people think I'm wrong for backing my husband instead of trying to force everyone to make up and be a happy family again. But these kids are 16 and 17, not 6 and 7. They knew exactly what they were doing when they chose their violent criminal biological father over the man who'd been nothing but good to them. Tristan sacrificed years of his life for children who weren't his responsibility. He could have dated women without kids, could have started his own family from scratch, could have avoided all this drama entirely. Instead, he stepped up and loved my kids like his own, just to get his heart broken by two ungrateful teenagers who threw him away for a deadbeat. I'm not going to force my husband to open himself up to more emotional abuse, just because my kids realized they messed up. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once you burn them down, and some lessons need to be learned the hard way. Derek's back in jail where he belongs. The kids learned what their real father is actually worth, and Tristan is done being anyone's backup plan. Maybe Noah and Amber will think twice before they treat good people like garbage in the future. Or maybe they won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. I made my choice and I don't regret it for a second.